Welcome to Brothers Keepers Podcast, episode 5.
Episode 5, let's get it.
We're going to be talking about stigma today.
Stigma.
Stigma. That's a word that always sticks in my head because every time I hear, I guess, attitudes that people have towards certain things, I think it's a good word. I think it's a meaningful word. And it's not something that I hear other people say a lot. It's
Right.
kind of more in certain circles who believe in that kind of thing or believe that it's a purpose for it. So I think it's worthy of an episode. I think it's worthy of a deep dive discussion. I'm curious what you brought up on the computer. What does the internet say about what stigma is and what that means?
So it's saying that it's a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person.
It's harsh language.
That's
disgraceful.
Another definition is a mark of disgrace or infamy, a stain or reproach as on one's reputation.
Mm.
So what do you get when you hear stigma?
That, but not. I guess in my head the terms aren't as harsh.
Okay.
But
yeah, because that's like straightforward.
More so like a maybe more like a connotation, just as far as the attitude around how you perceive something,
right?
In a negative sense, would be considered a stigma. So, right, like if you were if you smoke cigarettes, there's a negative connotation or a negative perception around the idea
of
smoking cigarettes.
Right.
It's a stigma attached to it. And going back to, the first episode, Vanishing Culture, I think part of that culture vanishing is also the vanishing of stigma. And I think we should talk about in this episode the different ways that that's true.
So should we try to alleviate stigma?
Well, I think that's
certain stigmas.
I think that's on a lot of people's agenda.
Okay.
I
think vanishing culture.
Right, exactly. I think that's on a lot of people's agenda, but I think it's a necessary evil, so to speak. I mean, not that I think it's evil per se, but it's certainly negative.
Right.
And I think it's necessary that certain things have negative perceptions tied to them because they discourage participation in that thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's a lot of things that go along with the culture slipping away, and that stigma that used to be there on a lot of different things that were attached to that are being peeled back, and people aren't as reluctant. They're not as resistant to those things as they might have been in generations past.
Now that's due to the fact that people, back to YOLO, if I let go of the stigma, whether it be traditionally or today, if I let go of that, I can kind of live my life carefree.
Yeah. And it's those accountability, the standards, it's being held to a certain ideal of what's acceptable behavior or what's not by a societal, just a general societal standard, right?
Right.
So one of my favorite examples, and not as my favorite as in I like it, but it's my favorite as in I think it highly illustrates how attitudes have shifted. I got into a debate, because I get into debates all the time.
All the time.
A couple years ago about the way women dress.
Okay.
Right? Because there's this whole rape culture thing that's permeating in the ethos right now about, no matter how a woman dresses and no matter how, she looks, it doesn't give a man the right to sexually assault her, which is true.
It is true.
Which is true. But I think it was Dave Chappelle that had a joke about that.
Right.
And he like, that's like me walking down the street in a police officer uniform.
The girl gets mad and says, oh, wait a minute. Just because I'm dressed this way does not make me a whore. Which is true. Gentlemen, that is true. Just because they dress a certain way doesn't mean they are a certain way. Don't ever forget it. But ladies, you must understand that is confusing. Just is. Now that would be like me, Dave Chappelle the comedian, walking around the streets in a cop uniform. Somebody might run up on me. Oh, thank God. Officer, help us. Come on, they're over here. Help us. I'm like, oh, just because I'm dressed this way does not make me a police officer.
So, and it's funny, but it was a good way to illustrate the point that I wanted to make about that. Is just, that I made at that time when I was having that debate is like, no, nobody ever has the right to do that.
Right.
But if a predator or somebody who's looking to get into that kind of
Exactly. You have to know
altercation,
that you have to know that those type of people are out there.
yes,
You don't tell a bee to run away from honey.
right, right,
You know what I mean?
right. No, that's 100%. But now with the stigma going, right, there used to be a stigma that was associated with women who would dress provocatively in what would be considered inappropriate setting.
Right.
Right.
Now
Now there isn't as much. There still is to a little bit, but like the Lizzo thing, right? That was something that happened recently.
Yeah.
Where if that was 20 years ago, she would have been banned from the stadium for life. But now it has nothing to do with her weight.
No, they invited her back.
Exactly.
That's
where we at.
Because they like the
stigma that used to be attached with that provocative, like that's called lewdness.
right.
You know what I mean? Public nudity, whatever. Like the stigma that used to be attached to that is gone for the most part, and it's no longer like people no longer look down on that as a negative.
Right.
And not necessarily the person, because I always say people are redeemable, but the action what that person is doing. 10 years now, I wouldn't even say 20 years ago. 10 years ago, that would have been like, yo, like that's inappropriate. That's wrong. So it wouldn't have been a dispute. Now it's 50-50. Some people saying it's wrong. Some people saying,
But like you said before, that's why it ties back and goes back into vanishing culture, because the world is more attracted to. In today's world, we don't want any restrictions.
no.
People want to be able to say what they want to say.
Yeah.
They want to be able to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
It's
lawlessness.
It's lawlessness. That perfect word for it.
Yeah.
It's there's no real foundation as to anything.
Mm-mm.
So
people is whimsical. They go with whatever floats their boat, whatever they find interesting at that period in their life.
like Lizzo, the people who run the stadium, the games, or anything like that, I'm sure, there's at least one out of 5 of them who make these decisions who say, this ain't right. We're not supposed to do this. But the other 4 are saying, hey, this might get us more tickets. So this might bring more people to the game based off of her publicity stunt.
Or it's the PC aspect where they don't want to criticize or condemn because now they're
sensitive.
Yeah, now they're offending somebody. Now it's all about who you offending.
Right.
You know what I mean? You offend the wrong people and, you lose your fun. And look what happened to Kevin Hart. And that wasn't even something he did recently. That was something he did 10 years ago.
10 years ago, right.
And he's getting in trouble for it today. You know what I mean? Like,
based off of his stigma 10 years ago.
The stigma, Ace, it wasn't his. It ain't like he created it.
Right.
That's the world. And that's what people say. It's like, that's the world he lived in. We all lived in at that time. That wasn't a controversial thing to say in 2011. It's controversial now to some. It's not to me. But to some people, it's a controversial thing to say now. But you can't hold him to today's standards. You know what I mean? That's like going back in Bill Russell's era of basketball and comparing his 3-point percentage to Klay Thompson. Like,
right.
It's a whole different type of environment that he was in.
What I don't understand is, even in terms of that, in his stigma, or universally everybody's stigma at that time, and how it changed is, it's like when we trying to win people over to Christ, right?
Yeah.
You could talk to one person and they're like, bro, just because you on this don't mean I got to be on this.
Yeah.
Right? And that's rightfully so. So if the stigma back then was, based off of what he said, hey, I'm not a fan of this, that, and the third. I'm not allowing my son to, if my son ever came to me, this way, I would shun him, or I would, go against, or whatever the case may be is. If I can't convince you that Christ is real, why should I change my stigma or my standard for the very thing that I believe in? You get what I'm saying?
Which perspective are you coming from? Are you coming from the perspective of somebody that's not a believer, or are you coming from the perspective of like the person that's trying to win that person over?
From the perspective of the person that's trying to win the person over and the non-believer. Because my whole point is, at the end of the day, he was being condemned for his beliefs, his stigma, and the things that he was saying, because he's not uh a part of or acceptable like everybody else is today, as to being open. Like he created boundaries. This is what I like. This is, and he didn't really want to take it back. But I said that to say this. When it comes to us talking to non-believers, their response, a lot of them, is always, listen, this is what you're on, I'm not on that. When, if that's the case, then we should be like that with everything. Don't condemn me because I have feelings or thoughts to this particular situation.
All of us, to an extent, understand the stigma that comes along with having faith or being religious, like to the point where people don't even want to say they're religious no more. Like being religious is looked at as like something like,
no, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Yeah, being saying, like, even saying religion or religious or adhering to that, it's like stigmatized now.
Right.
That's something that's stigmatized now, when, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, being non-religious or being an atheist was the stigma. It's like, you don't believe in God? What?
Exactly.
Now that's like, oh, well, that's kind of normal, and you do believe in God, or at least you live a lifestyle that's evident of your belief in God.
Right.
You can be stigmatized for that. So it's still, I guess it hasn't gone extinct, but I think it's shifting. The attitudes around what's considered good and what's considered bad is really changing a lot.
I think the stigma that's created today is based off of the majority. So whatever the majority is with, that's what we're going with. That's the side that the world is choosing to be on.
I think that's what they want you to think. It's not the majority. I really don't believe,
don't believe
that's
that?
the majority.
Okay.
I think it's the media. It's the majority of the media.
Right.
The bull, the bull Monterey, I shared him on my IG story the other day.
My guy.
He wear a shirt, media says most effective devil in America. And that's real to me. Like,
I need to order that.
They make it seem so overwhelming, like everybody is really feeling this way, or everybody is a general consensus, the whole community, but really it's not. It's the whole entertainment industry, maybe. It's 90% of that.
Right.
But everyday people, that's not reflective of their lifestyle.
Right.
You know what I mean? You take something like the transgender bathroom issue, right? When that was going on a couple years ago, that was the top news in the country.
Right.
Like, you would think it's 6 billion transgender people that's being denied bathrooms. This is 0.0004 of all the people in the world.
Right.
And it's the top of public news discourse for months, to the point where, certain Congresses was pressured into passing laws because they didn't want to offend this like super duper minority.
Right.
But if you watch the media and look how it's portrayed on TV, you would think it's a lot more. It's really not.
You'd think this is CNN top news.
You go through Whole Foods or go through, maybe in some like city areas it's more prevalent, but even then, the majority of people you see are not like transgender people or anything like that. And what I'm saying is that the perception would be that there's a lot more of them. So I don't even think, when it comes to a lot of this stuff, that the media and a lot of the even the politicians sometimes that they push, it's not as prevalent as they want us to think it is.
Right.
I think that's just their marketing.
Part of the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of the agenda.
What do you think about mental health stigma?
That's another one that's actually going away.
Mm-hmm.
And I have mixed feelings about that, because I think, on the one hand, mental health should be destigmatized to an extent where we can talk about it, not necessarily openly, because I don't think everybody should know if you're on meds. I really don't.
Right.
But I think people should feel comfortable with talking about it with the right people, and they shouldn't let it make them feel like, I guess, worse than they should feel about it.
Right.
Because you're gonna feel bad if you're sick. You're gonna feel bad to some extent. But so on the one hand, I think the loosening of the stigma is allowing people to be a little bit more open and seek help a little bit more, but at the same time I feel like it's becoming so lax now to where you have a bad day and all of a sudden you tweeting about depression,
Right.
and I mean, and suicide
No,
and stuff like
I
that.
definitely feel like we've taken mental health. It's a big concern because we've ignored it for a long time too, though. I do feel like it was ignored for a long time, but I feel like right now it's like the word toxic.
Ugh.
We're taking the mental health thing to a whole another. My dog died. I got mental health issues. I just lost my dog of 13 years. And who kind of goes overboard with it? Charlemagne. Charlemagne kind of go overboard with it. I watched this dude interview a whole lot of people, and no matter what they talking about, he always goes back to, do you think your mental health is right? Do you think, because since I seen the therapist, which we all should possibly talk to somebody.
That's private though.
But that's private though.
Or at least it should be.
And
it's no glory in that.
Right.
And that's, last week's episode. It's no glory in your infirmities. Stop.
Right.
Like, and it's not necessarily anything to feel shameful about necessarily.
Right.
But some things maybe you should feel shame about. But the stigma's gone. So now we feel like it's virtuous by default. But what is mental health? Like, how can you, that's such a vague like thing to even talk about. Like, what is mental, like,
because there's no direct. Right.
Like, what is a healthy brain? Like, we all have responses and accumulations of experiences that give us our reactions, and
that's called life.
Right. So who's to say, like, what's the parameter that says, okay, up until this point you're mentally healthy. When you do this, you're mentally unhealthy.
Right.
You can fluctuate from the definition, or not the definition, but from the way people use it. It sounds like anything else, a mood swing. Like when I'm angry, when I'm more angry than I should be, is that mental health? Like, you know what I mean?
Is it us being so concerned on mental health or acting like everybody is just going through this crisis, I mean, that's part of the reason why people are having these opioid addictions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As well. And the stigma on that, it used to be you was crazy for popping some pills. You were crazy. Now this is a thing that it's like
it's just what people do.
Just listen.
And that's kind of sad. That's kind of sad. And that's why I think that stigma is valuable, because what stigma is for a lot of people is a deterrent.
It creates boundaries.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if I see, this might sound bad, but if I see how everybody treats the neighborhood crackhead,
mm-hmm.
and not that they treat him bad, but they just look at him and they're like, man, I can't believe he used to be so this.
Right.
Man, I can't believe he did this. And this is so sad. I feel so bad for him. Like, there's a negative stigma associated with being a junkie.
Right.
Right. But if we repeal that stigma, now when we interact with those people, there's no emotional or mental deterrent for people that's observers.
Right.
So they're more likely to participate because the consequences for participation seem to be dissipated.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, if I see that everybody has a negative perception of this person, I'm less likely to pursue it.
Exactly.
But when you repeal the stigma, now it's a more acceptable course of action, which means by default, more people are going to at least experiment with it. They might not. They might not stay there, but they're at least going to experiment with it.
Right.
But it's multiple aspects. I think, single parenthood is another one that's being destigmatized a lot. A lot of people have glorified, growing up in a single parent home, men and women have glorified it to the point where it's almost normal. It's almost the default now, especially in certain communities.
Right.
To have a single parent household. And the ironic part, I think, that I see coming in the future is that's going to be normal, to where now that's not even, it used to be like, oh, you was a strong woman and, or strong person, because it's single dads too. But it's like, it was exceptional for a person to do that.
Right.
But 20 years from now,
I mean, I don't even think 20 years from now. I think now. I think what you're talking about will reach 20 years from now is happening now.
Yeah.
You know, like the value of family is
It's gone.
gone. You know, the kids don't understand it. You know, the adults don't understand it. You know, our generation especially. You know, because I do believe that the generation before us, they fought for certain things. You know, even in wrongdoings. You know, that the idea mentally was to have a family, or to
Yeah.
create, or to hold on to this. You know, for whatever reason. You know, for my dad said to me the other day, he said, "You're a legacy builder." You know, but I believe the generation before us, that's what they were. That's what they stood on. You know,
That was at least the ideal.
the idea exactly.
Even if you couldn't achieve it, you gave it your best effort, and that's a lot of what your life was about, was making your best effort to achieve that. And the culture now, I feel, devalues it so much that it's not even a goal.
There's no
anymore.
importance to it.
They don't value it. It's the nuclear, and not just family, cousins and brothers. The nuclear family, husband, wife, children. That is the foundation of family. Contrary to popular belief, people think it's parent-child relationship. Your child is going to be a child for 16, 17 years, and they're gone.
And they're gone.
Marriage is a lifetime.
Right.
That's the foundation of family. Families are built in marriages.
How many friends do you have that's married?
How many friends do I have?
I was gonna get at that next, but
that are married.
How many people do you know that's married? Let's leave it at that.
Young people, or I know a lot of older people that's married.
Young people.
I would say 35 and under. I know personally. I'm not going to count everybody because I'm going to leave people out, but I'm going to say off the top of my head, I'm going to count a couple as one.
Okay, absolutely.
So I know maybe 3 couples personally.
3,
maybe
3. Me, possibly.
Possibly
3, 4, maybe.
And the people you thinking about is probably the same people.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
But that's
the
stigma today. You know, and that's what makes that's sad. That's sad because at the end of the day, we're only getting worse. That's why I said it's happening now. It don't got to be 20 years from now. 20 years from now, listen, it's I don't know what we might not even be here 20 years from now. The way it's going right now, but
still a lot left that's supposed to happen.
It's like we're losing things to follow.
Well, yeah,
you know what I mean.
Well, everybody's following something else. You know, everybody.
But what's the importance of what we're following now?
Pleasure.
Like what pleasure?
Pleasure. You know, what makes us feel good, or what's convenient for us, or what affirms us and says that whatever we're doing is okay, or whatever we're doing is a good thing. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day about the difference between self-love and selfish. You know what I mean? And that's a line that can get blurred at times, because intentionally I feel like from let's just call it the agenda, you know, some things you do need to do to take care of yourself, but certain things, when it comes to how you treat others and serving others and making yourself available and even vulnerable sometimes,
right?
You know, a lot of that is rooted in selfishness, when it's, you know, against being that type of person. So it's just, there's so many things out there, right? And I shared a thing on my Facebook the other day from the Bible. I think it was in Luke, and it was basically Jesus talking about all the things that would happen at the coming of the end times. And, you know, one of the lines that stood out to me is it was describing man's attitude, and it was saying, you know, always learning, but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. So it's like, we're going to constantly be learning things. We constantly going to be like, oh, did you know this? Did you know this? Like, and it, like you said, it's not even 20 years from now. I feel like there's so much information out there.
Right.
You can really get lost. There's no end to the internet.
Right.
Right. By the time you get 36 hours in, there's 36 hours worth of new content. It's like infinite. The internet is infinite.
Right.
So it's like, there's so much information in there. There's no way to consume it all. There's no end to it. There's no back page. Like when you'll read a book, there's a last page. The book is done.
But that's been people's problem in terms of closing in on what they should actually follow or do.
Right. And
Because
that's
they like, if I read this, okay, but then this said this.
right.
You know, it's people being lost and confused and not, you need to create a stigma. You need willpower, you need strength, and you need faith.
Think
for this
about
life.
this. Think about spending 30 years going from ideology to ideology, or lifestyle to lifestyle, or philosophy to philosophy, only to get to the end of that 30 years and realize you're not even a fraction of the way through all of the different ways that you could have lived those 30 years. There's no limit to a lie.
Right.
And that's the thing that I try to tell people a lot about. Truth is it's exclusive. It once you say what something is,
that's what it is.
That eliminates everything else.
Right.
And that's why we need to hold on to that as a concept, because, if we let go of truth, then we all lost and confused, because it's always going to boil down to our perceptions. But if the truth exists and it's there for us, then all we have to do is find it. We have to find what that truth is. And then, but with when it comes to the stigmas associated with certain things that we didn't used to do or didn't used to celebrate, and those things passing away, it's encouraging more and more people to partake in things that they probably wouldn't have if we as a culture would hold the same kind of ideas to it.
I don't think we want to. There's not a want. We get more gratification and fulfillment in what's fun versus what's important.
Because usually whatever is important and whatever is meaningful is difficult.
It's either difficult, hard work, or
it's no instant gratification.
Right.
You probably won't ever, get the gratification you think you deserve for it.
Right.
But, it's good for you as opposed to good to you. You know what I mean?
I know I can build this bridge, but I'd rather build this house.
I gotta focus on me right now.
I gotta focus. Yeah.
My fingers hurt, and I don't want to abuse myself, and I deserve. Right, I deserve.
We always talk about. Oh man, you know what we got to come up with, and this is under stigma too, though. But I was thinking about this the other day. Entitlement.
Yeah,
that's like a.
Yeah.
We feel entitled to everything, but who says that you deserve all these things?
Like, and are you really counting?
Right.
That's my thing.
Right.
Let's just say you went to court and you had to prove in court that you were actually deserving of the things that you say you deserve.
Right.
And there was a judge who could roll back the tape and look at all the things you did, all the things you say you did, all the things you lied about.
Right.
Like, do you really deserve that? Like, honestly.
Yo, mom is so hard. I tell you that all the time, man, because I think I told you this before, but we having a conversation with her, and from time to time, you find yourself complaining. We all get in a place where it's like, you're complaining like, why me? And she pissed me off because she said, why not you? But that's so real though. What have you done that you feel like
this can't happen to you?
This can't happen to you. Or you deserve anything
more than the next person.
You know what I mean? Entitlement.
Yeah. Like who told you? Who gave you that expectation?
Yeah.
Who gave you the expectation that you wouldn't have to suffer?
And I think we create our own, the same way we create our own stigmas. We pick and choose what we want to follow, what we, what's misleading, what we should let go. We create our own agendas in our head as to what we think something should be.
Yeah.
That messes us up.
Yeah, it does.
Because that kind of veers us from the truth.
No, for sure it does. And I just, my hope would be is that, because I don't believe things are going to go back the way that they were.
Nah, that's sad though.
I don't think that they were. But
and we come so far, but go ahead, my bad.
What we could do is, just be aware of what's happening, and then, try to hold on to certain aspects that we felt like were meaningful or has some legitimacy to them,
Right.
and just try to maintain that for ourselves and for our families, because I think the best thing you can do for the world is be a better you. You know what I mean? And a better you that interacts with the world. And I feel like that light is going to shine outward. And I'm pretty sure there's a scripture that says
That
that.
says that, right? That can connect to it.
Probably. But, I just think that, if your own life is in chaos and you don't really have your own stuff in order, and like it's hard for me to see you telling other people how they should be or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? And one of the things that stigma used to do is it held everybody to this kind of cultural standard of what we knew was acceptable and not acceptable to varying degrees.
Right.
You know what I mean? Different cultures may have different stigmas.
But kept us grounded.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. And it just kind of it filtered certain things out. You know what I mean? You knew certain things was not acceptable to be on the list of what you want to be when you grow up.
When you grow up, right.
You know what I mean? Certain things would just not even pop. It would seem ridiculous because there's stigma attached to it. It's like a subconscious mechanism to keep the foolishness out and keep you on a straight and narrow. But now
you
we
got
just
people
want to let everything in. Like, no, let's just
Man, you got
embrace
people
it.
waking up. Today's Wednesday morning, and today I'll be a clown.
That's how I identify.
That's how I identify.
And
today I'll be a clown.
If you tell me I'm not, you're oppressing me.
Exactly. The stigma of masculinity. Can men still be manly without feeling ashamed?
No.
I knew
Next
you.
question.
I knew you.
Next question.
I already know you. I already know you. Where you was gonna go with it.
No, we can't. But women can.
So you can't be manly without feeling ashamed?
No.
Okay.
But women can be manly without feeling ashamed. What?
Why? Talk to me.
Women are allowed to be masculine and is considered strong and assertive and all of the masculine adjectives.
God did not design a woman to be masculine in any form, in any way. So go ahead, and you knew this. Will really add a whole another 30 minutes.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I said.
That's why you said what's the
time check. Because yeah, that'll. And maybe we could do that. That's the next episode. We'll continue that. But women are allowed to be masculine. Men are not. If men do it, it's toxic. If women do it, it's empowering. But men are allowed to be feminine, right? We can wear skirts. We can wear makeup. We can, be effeminate in every kind of way, and it's acceptable to the culture. But masculine men and masculinity in men and males is looked at as patriarchy and oppressive.
Right. Oppressive. That's what I was about to say. Yep.
And white privilege and all of these things that are,
it has nothing to do with white privilege.
Built the society that we live in, that has all of the privileges and the access that we have, is built by this system, but it's the worst system ever, and we need to tear it down.
Nah.
But it's literally why you have everything that you have, everything that you've been able to do.
Man, this world don't like structure.
No.
That's what it is. You can't take the masculinity of a man if the man was put here first to lead.
Bro. It's the spirit of the Antichrist. And we might have to leave it there because to go so deep into that, but basically the Antichrist is here to usurp authority and to invert everything in God's order. He want to flip it inside out.
Right.
He want to flip it inside out. That's why he targeting these kids. That's why he targeting the minds of these women, because that's what happened in the beginning with Eve. And I think I told you this before. The Bible says she looked at the fruit and she saw that it was good for food. She reasoned within her own mind that she could eat this, and then she did. You know what I mean? She thought that thought process led her down a certain path and eventually into sin. And look at the result. And now we in a place now, upon the return as it's coming back, where a lot of those same things are happening on a mass scale.
Right.
It's like a cultural flip.
Right.
And you see where we headed.
So, Brothers Keepers Podcast, episode 5, Stigma.
Stigma.
This might be continued. We're gonna have to continue this, especially talking about women being more masculine than men.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we definitely gotta tap into because I'm fed up. You know, at the end of the day, you know, me having 2 daughters, you know, I'm raising my daughters to be queens.
Mm.
You know, not
Mm-mm.
not
They gonna
ki-
be.
not kings. They're gonna be. Don't speak that on my daughters.
No,
now.
I'm just saying if the world has this way, they
No, but
won't
if
be.
the world has its way, then you know they won't. But
Let us know what y'all think in the comments.
subscribe.
Like, share, subscribe to the page. Follow us on Instagram at the Brothers Keepers Podcast.
Yeah.
Follow us on Facebook at Brothers Keepers Podcast.
You know, make sure you hit the email to brotherskeepersradio@gmail.com.
Yep.
You know, we can respond through email privately. Doesn't got to be shared with a bunch of people, but
That's a fact.
you know,
Thanks for watching, guys.
Tune in.
Check y'all out next time.
yeah.
Oh.